Welcome to Georgia Highlands College Math 97 and Math 99 instructional videos. In this video segment, we'll be answering the question, how do you add or subtract fractions with unlike denominators? Well, the first step in this process is to determine what the LCD is. And LCD stands for least common denominator, or the smallest value that both of the denominators go into as a factor. So after you figure out what the LCD is, you're going to rewrite each of the fractions that you're working with as an equivalent fraction with the LCD. And to do this process, we're going to multiply by, and I've got in quotation marks, 1. So it's going to be a clever form of 1 that will bring our denominator to that LCD target. And then the last step is to follow the steps for adding and subtracting fractions with common denominators, because at that point you will have turned your fractions into fractions with common denominators. So first let's take a look at the principle of equivalent fractions, and then we'll take a look at a couple of examples to hopefully make these steps a little clearer for you. All right, so we have this principle of equivalent fractions, which basically says as long as you're multiplying the numerator and the denominator by the same value, those fractions are exactly the same. So being the same, that's why we have an equal sign there. And we're multiplying by the same value in the numerator and the denominator. But in the steps that I told you we'd be multiplying by 1. So if I come in here and put big parentheses around the C over C there, C divided by C is just 1. So that's why these fractions are considered equivalent or the same thing, because we know multiplying by 1 doesn't change anything. So let's go ahead and take a look at these examples. This first example I have is 1/2 plus 1/3. And the LCD, or the least common denominator between 2 and 3, would be 6. Because 2 goes into 6 3 times and 3 goes into 6 2 times. So you're just looking for a target number that both of the denominators will go into as factors. So I'll just write off to the side here that our LCD is 6. So when we make our equivalent fractions, we want those denominators to be 6. So we need to multiply by whatever factor will create 6 in the denominator. All right, and here's what it looks like. So I have 1/2 plus 1/3, and I need to get both of these to having a common denominator. So I'm going to multiply by 1 in the form of 3 over 3 for that first fraction, and I'm going to multiply by 1 in the form of 2 over 2 for the second fraction, because you'll see that when I multiply those fractions that I will then have a common denominator of 6. So when I multiply these first two fractions, I end up with 3/6, because when we multiply fractions, we just multiply straight across. So numerator with numerator, denominator with denominator, and that will be added to 2/6. Now I'm just counting up how many sixths I have total. And we start out with 3, we add 2 more, which gives us 5/6. All right, let's take a look at subtraction. It's pretty much the same process, but instead of gathering up more sixths, we'll be taking away sixths. But it's that same process of creating equivalent fractions using the LCD as your target. And once again, as I multiply by 3 over 3 and 2 over 2, I'm not changing those fractions. Remember, they're equal because I'm just multiplying by 1. 3 over 3 is 1, and 2 over 2 is 1. So I end up with 3/6 minus 2/6. And here's another intermediate step, subtracting those numerators over the common denominator, which leaves us with 1/6 when we subtract those. All right. Well, I hope that this has been helpful for you in beginning to understand how to add and subtract fractions with unlike denominators. The secret is you just multiply by 1, and you multiply by 1 in the form of whatever factor you need over whatever factor you need to get that denominator to the LCD, the least common denominator. If you have any other questions about adding and subtracting fractions, please make sure to contact your Highlands instructor. Thank you.